Elena Volkov adjusted her headset as the military transport helicopter descended toward the forward operating base in Afghanistan. Snow swirled outside the windows, and she could see the lights of the compound growing larger below. At 28, she was one of the most skilled Russian-to-English translators the military had ever recruited, fluent in 7 languages and holding advanced degrees in linguistics and international relations. Yet as she looked around at the Navy SEALs sharing the cramped helicopter cabin, she felt the familiar weight of their skeptical stares. The SEALs had been briefing each other loudly over the engine noise, discussing their Christmas Eve mission parameters. Elena caught fragments of their conversation, technical jargon mixed with crude jokes about spending the holiday in a war zone. She noticed how they deliberately excluded her from their discussions, treating her like cargo rather than a team member. This wasn't unusual. Throughout her 3-year military career, combat units consistently viewed translators as necessary burdens rather than valuable assets. "Hope the translator doesn't slow us down," muttered Sergeant Martinez, not bothering to lower his voice. His teammates chuckled, and Elena pretended to focus on her mission briefing documents. She had learned early in her career that responding to such comments only made things worse. Better to prove herself through actions than words. The mission briefing had been straightforward on paper. Intelligence suggested a high-value target was meeting with local insurgent leaders in a compound 15 kilometers from the base. Elena's job was simple: accompany the SEAL team, provide real-time translation during any encounters with locals, and assist with document recovery if they found intelligence materials. Standard support role, nothing glamorous. What the briefing hadn't mentioned was Elena's background before joining the military. Born in Moscow to a Russian father and American mother, she had immigrated to the United States at age 12 when her parents divorced. Her father, Colonel Viktor Volkov, had been a decorated sniper instructor in the Russian military before political circumstances forced the family to relocate. During her teenage years in rural Montana, Viktor had taught his daughter everything he knew about marksmanship, fieldcraft, and tactical awareness. He insisted these skills were essential for survival in an uncertain world. Elena had excelled at long-range shooting, winning several civilian competitions before college. However, she chose linguistics over military service initially, believing her language skills could serve her country better in diplomatic roles. Only after witnessing the translation failures that led to civilian casualties in early Afghanistan operations did she enlist, determined to prevent such tragedies through accurate communication. The helicopter touched down with a jarring impact, and the SEALs immediately began their equipment checks. Elena gathered her translation gear, digital recorders, portable reference materials, and encrypted communication devices. She also quietly secured her personal sidearm, a standard-issue Beretta M9 that she hoped never to use. The team leader, Lieutenant Commander James Harrison, gave her a perfunctory nod as they prepared to disembark. "Stay close, keep quiet, and do your job when we tell you," Harrison instructed curtly. "This isn't a training exercise." Elena nodded professionally, fighting back the urge to mention her own extensive training. She had completed the same survival courses as many of the SEALs, earned expert marksmanship ratings with multiple weapon systems, and studied tactical medicine. But her official role was translator, and challenging the team hierarchy would only create unnecessary friction. The base was bustling despite the late hour. Christmas Eve meant little in an active combat zone, and operations continued around the clock. Elena noticed decorations in the mess hall as they passed through for final preparations. Someone had hung tinsel around the coffee station and taped a paper Christmas tree to the wall. The contrast between holiday cheer and military readiness struck her as profoundly American. During the final mission briefing, intelligence officers updated the team on recent developments. Satellite imagery showed increased activity around the target compound, suggesting the meeting was proceeding as expected. Local informants reported at least 12 armed guards, possibly more. The plan remained unchanged: fast insertion, capture or eliminate the high-value target, gather intelligence, and extract before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Elena studied the compound layout carefully, noting sight lines and potential escape routes. Her tactical training kicked in automatically, though she kept her observations to herself. The SEALs were discussing entry points and fire team assignments, their conversation peppered with military acronyms and operational shorthand that she understood perfectly but wasn't expected to contribute to. As they prepared to board vehicles for transport to the insertion point, Sergeant Martinez made another disparaging comment about babysitting the translator. This time, Petty Officer Johnson joined in, suggesting that Elena should stay with the vehicles during the actual operation. Their casual dismissal stung, but Elena maintained her professional composure. She had dealt with worse attitudes during previous deployments. The convoy of armored vehicles rolled out into the Afghan night, headlights cutting through swirling snow. Elena sat quietly as the SEALs conducted last-minute equipment checks and reviewed hand signals. She performed her own preparations discreetly, testing her communication gear, reviewing local dialect variations she might encounter, and mentally rehearsing the compound layout. Years of her father's training had taught her that preparation was the difference between success and failure in any tactical situation. What none of the SEALs realized was that Elena had been studying this particular region for months, not just its languages, but its tactical characteristics. She had analyzed previous operations in similar terrain, identified common enemy tactics, and even practiced shooting scenarios that might occur in compound environments. Her linguistic work was just one dimension of her capabilities, but it was all anyone saw when they looked at her. The vehicles stopped 2 kilometers from the target, and the team prepared for the final approach on foot. Elena checked her gear one last time, ensuring her translation equipment was secure but accessible. She also verified her sidearm was properly loaded, though she expected it to remain holstered throughout the mission. As they moved out into the snowy darkness, she wondered if this Christmas Eve would be like all the others, another routine mission where her skills went unrecognized and used beyond their most basic application. The approach to the compound began smoothly. Elena moved silently behind the SEAL formation, her boots finding secure footing in the snow-covered rocky terrain. The team's night vision equipment painted everything in eerie green hues, but Elena's eyes had adapted well to the darkness. Her father's training in night operations was serving her well, though the SEALs remained unaware of her enhanced capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Harrison held up a closed fist, signaling the team to halt. They were 300 meters from the target compound, positioned on a ridge that provided excellent overwatch of the objective. Elena could see the building clearly through her binoculars, a traditional Afghan structure with thick walls and a flat roof, surrounded by a low stone wall. Warm light flickered from several windows, confirming the intelligence reports of ongoing activity. The plan called for a coordinated assault from 2 directions. Harrison would lead the primary assault team through the front entrance, while Sergeant Martinez took 3 men around to the rear exit. Elena was assigned to remain with the overwatch position alongside Petty Officer Johnson, who would provide sniper support with his M110 semi-automatic sniper system. Her role was to monitor radio communications and provide translation if the team encountered civilians or captured enemy personnel. As the assault teams moved into position, Elena noticed something that made her uncomfortable. Through her binoculars, she observed movement patterns around the compound that didn't match the intelligence briefing. Instead of 12 guards, she counted at least 18 armed figures, and their positioning suggested a level of tactical sophistication that exceeded typical insurgent capabilities. These weren't local fighters waiting for a meeting. They were prepared for combat. "Johnson," she whispered, keeping her voice low. "I'm seeing more hostiles than expected. Count at least 18, possibly more." Petty Officer Johnson adjusted his scope and studied the compound. "I count 14, he replied dismissively. "Intel was close enough. Quit being paranoid." Elena wanted to argue, but knew it would be pointless. She had spotted several fighters positioned in concealed locations that Johnson's scope couldn't detect from his angle, but her observations would be dismissed as translator nervousness. Instead, she quietly keyed her radio and attempted to warn the assault teams directly. "Overwatch to assault teams. Be advised I count at least 18 hostiles. Repeat, 18 hostiles in and around the objective." Harrison's response crackled through her earpiece. "Roger, translator. We'll adapt as needed. Maintain radio discipline." The dismissive tone in his voice was clear. Elena's intelligence assessment was being politely ignored, just like every other tactical observation she had ever offered. She watched helplessly as the assault teams continued their approach, walking into what she increasingly believed was a carefully prepared ambush. Her fears proved justified when the compound erupted in gunfire. The first shots came not from inside the building but from concealed positions Elena had identified earlier. Muzzle flashes bloomed in the darkness as insurgent fighters opened fire with automatic weapons, catching the SEAL teams in a crossfire that had obviously been planned in advance. "Contact front," Harrison's voice shouted over the radio. "Heavy resistance. We're taking effective fire from multiple positions." Johnson immediately began engaging targets with his sniper rifle, the sharp crack of his M110 cutting through the chaos. Elena grabbed her radio and began coordinating between the teams, translating intercepted enemy communications and providing real-time intelligence updates. But even as she worked, she could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. The insurgents weren't just shooting randomly. They were employing advanced tactics, bounding overwatch, coordinated fields of fire, and what appeared to be pre-planned withdrawal routes. Worse, Elena's linguistic training allowed her to understand their radio chatter, and what she heard made her blood run cold. This wasn't a meeting being defended. It was a trap specifically designed to kill American forces. "Johnson, we need to move," she urged. "I'm hearing chatter about flanking movements. They know our position. Stay down and do your job," Johnson snapped, continuing to fire at targets below. "I can handle the tactical situation." But Elena could see what Johnson couldn't. Through her binoculars, she had spotted muzzle flashes from positions that were slowly working their way up the ridge toward their overwatch position. The insurgents weren't just defending the compound. They were attempting to surround and eliminate the entire SEAL team. Her father's tactical training screamed warnings that her military colleagues were too focused on their immediate targets to recognize. The situation became critical when Elena heard a specific phrase in the enemy radio chatter: "Sniper na chripka," Russian words meaning sniper on the ridge. Her blood froze as she realized the implications. These weren't just local insurgents. There were Russian-trained fighters among them, possibly even Russian military advisors. And they had identified Johnson's position. "Johnson, we have to move now," she insisted, grabbing his arm. "They've spotted us, and they're moving to flank." Johnson shrugged her off angrily. "I said stay down. Stop panicking and let me work." Elena's training warred with her orders. Every instinct told her to take initiative, but military protocol demanded she remain in her assigned support role. Below in the compound, she could see the assault teams pinned down by accurate fire, their position becoming more precarious by the minute. The radio crackled with increasingly desperate situation reports as ammunition ran low and casualties mounted. That's when she saw the glint of a scope in the rocks 50 meters to their left. A sniper had worked his way into position to eliminate Johnson, and the petty officer was completely focused on targets to his front. Elena's father had drilled her on threat recognition until it became instinctive, and she knew they had perhaps seconds before Johnson was killed. "Sniper left," she shouted, but Johnson was firing and didn't hear her over his weapons report. Elena faced a split-second decision that would define the rest of the mission. She could continue following protocol, maintaining her support role while watching Johnson die, or she could act on her training and capabilities. Her hand moved instinctively to her sidearm as she spotted the enemy sniper adjusting his scope for a killing shot. Years of her father's instruction crystallized into a single moment of absolute clarity. Protocol had failed to account for the real tactical situation, and people were going to die unless someone acted decisively. Elena drew her Beretta and fired 3 quick shots at the enemy sniper's position, her bullets sparking off the rocks and forcing him to take cover. Johnson spun around in shock. "What the hell are you doing?" "Saving your life," Elena replied grimly, keeping her eyes on the sniper's position. "We need to move to a new firing position immediately, or we're both dead." For the first time since the mission began, Johnson looked at Elena with something other than dismissive condescension. The professional competence in her voice, the steady way she held her weapon, and the tactical accuracy of her assessment forced him to reconsider his assumptions about the translator he had been babysitting. How many? He asked tersely. At least 3, possibly 4 moving up the ridge, Elena replied, her binoculars scanning the terrain. The one I shot at is in the rocks at our 10 o'clock. There's another approximately 70 meters to our right, and I think there's a spotter team working their way up the back slope. Johnson grabbed his rifle and gear. Lead the way. Elena's transformation from dismissed translator to tactical team member had begun, though neither of them yet realized how dramatically the night's events would escalate. Elena led Johnson along a covered route she had identified during their initial approach, moving with the fluid precision of someone trained in tactical movement from childhood. Her father's lessons in fieldcraft proved invaluable as she navigated the rocky terrain, finding concealment where Johnson would have been exposed. Behind her, the petty officer was beginning to understand that his assumptions about the translator had been dangerously wrong. They reached a new firing position 30 meters to the right of their original location, with better concealment and multiple escape routes. Elena immediately began scanning for the enemy snipers while Johnson set up his rifle. Through her binoculars, she spotted movement in 3 different locations, confirming her earlier assessment. The insurgents were conducting a coordinated effort to eliminate the American Overwatch position. Target at 2 o'clock, approximately 60 meters, Elena whispered, providing precise range and bearing information. He's behind the large boulder with the scraggly bush on top. Johnson adjusted his scope and found the target immediately. I see him. How did you spot him so fast? Training, Elena replied tersely, continuing to scan. She located the second sniper and was about to call him out when her earpiece crackled with Harrison's desperate voice. Overwatch, we need immediate fire support. We're pinned down and taking casualties. Martinez's team is cut off, and we've lost comms with Bravo 2. Elena keyed her radio while maintaining her surveillance. Overwatch copies. We have enemy snipers attempting to flank our position, but we're engaging. Stand by for fire support. What she didn't broadcast was her growing realization that this operation had been compromised from the beginning. The enemy positioning, their advanced tactics, and the presence of Russian-speaking fighters suggested intelligence far beyond what local insurgents should possess. Someone had fed the insurgents detailed information about American operational patterns, timing, and possibly even the specific SEAL team composition. Johnson fired, his shot echoing across the ridge. Through her binoculars, Elena saw one of the enemy snipers jerk and fall backward. Target down, she confirmed, then immediately shifted to locate the remaining threats. Second target moving to cover, approximately 40 meters north of the first position. As Johnson repositioned for his next shot, Elena's linguistic skills picked up radio chatter that made her stomach drop. The enemy wasn't just communicating in local dialects. They were using sophisticated tactical terminology in Russian, coordinated with what sounded like professional military code words. These weren't insurgents being advised by Russian trainers. These were Russian military personnel operating in Afghanistan. Johnson, we have a bigger problem, she said quietly. I'm intercepting Russian military communications. This isn't an insurgent operation, it's a Russian Special Forces unit. Johnson paused his shooting preparations. Are you certain? Positive. I'm hearing operational codes and terminology that only Spetsnaz would use. They're calling this operation Christmas Gift, and they specifically mention eliminating American elite units on December 24th. The implications were staggering. If Russian Special Forces were actively engaging American troops in Afghanistan, it represented a massive escalation that could trigger international incidents. More immediately, it meant the SEAL team was facing opponents with training and equipment equivalent to their own, not the local fighters they had prepared to encounter. Elena's radio crackled again. Overwatch, this is Harrison. Martinez's team is completely cut off. We're seeing movement that suggests at least 20 hostiles, and their tactics are way too sophisticated for local insurgents. What's your assessment from up there? Elena looked at Johnson, who nodded for her to respond. Harrison, be advised we're dealing with what appears to be Russian Special Forces personnel, not local insurgents. I'm intercepting professional military communications in Russian. This was a planned ambush specifically targeting American forces. A long silence followed before Harrison's voice returned, tight, with controlled anger. Roger that. New mission parameters. We extract our people and get this intelligence back to command. Overwatch. Can you provide precision fire support for Martinez's team? Johnson studied the compound through his scope. Negative. Too many friendlies mixed with hostiles. And the range is getting extreme for precision work. Elena had been thinking tactically throughout the exchange, and she saw a solution that Johnson couldn't implement with his current weapon system. The Russian snipers were positioned to block any rescue attempt, but they were also concentrated in a specific area that could be engaged effectively with the right equipment and positioning. Johnson, there's a Dragunov position approximately 200 meters down the ridge, she said, pointing toward a cluster of rocks. I spotted the shooter earlier when he was repositioning. If we can neutralize him and his spotter, it opens up a corridor for Martinez's team to extract. 200 meters with a pistol? You're joking. Elena wasn't thinking about her pistol. During the initial mission briefing, she had noted the location of a weapons cache the SEALs had established as an emergency resupply point. That cache included backup sniper rifles, and Elena knew exactly where it was located. More importantly, her father had trained her extensively on the Dragunov rifle system, as he had access to captured examples during his Russian military service. The weapons cache is 40 meters from here, she said. There should be backup sniper systems available. Johnson looked at her with new understanding. You can shoot precision rifles? My father was a sniper instructor before we immigrated, Elena replied simply. I've been shooting long range since I was 14. The radio interrupted their conversation with Martinez's panicked voice. Taking heavy fire. Johnson's down. Repeat. Johnson is down. We need immediate support, or we're not making it out. Elena felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. The mission was failing, American soldiers were dying, and she possessed skills that could make the difference between successful extraction and catastrophic loss. But using those skills meant abandoning her role as a translator and taking on responsibilities far beyond her official assignment. Johnson made the decision for both of them. Go get that rifle. I'll cover you and coordinate with Harrison. Elena sprinted toward the cache location, her mind automatically calculating distances, wind factors, and shooting angles. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Precision shooting is not about the weapon, Elena. It is about understanding the entire tactical situation and making every shot count when lives depend on accuracy. The weapons cache was hidden beneath a camouflage tarp, exactly where the briefing materials had indicated. Elena quickly located AM-24 sniper weapon system, checked its condition, and verified the scope was properly zeroed. The rifle felt familiar in her hands despite being an American system rather than the Russian weapons her father had trained her on. Precision shooting principles remained constant regardless of the specific rifle platform. As she returned to Johnson's position, Elena could see muzzle flashes from the compound where the SEAL teams were pinned down. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly, and conventional support wasn't sufficient to extract the teams safely. What was needed was precision elimination of specific high-value targets who were coordinating the enemy response. I count 17 distinct enemy positions, Elena reported as she settled into a shooting stance. The Russian sniper teams are the key targets. Eliminate them, and their coordination collapses. Johnson observed her professional setup with growing respect. Range. First target, 180 meters. Second target, 220 meters. Wind negligible, temperature dropping. Elena's voice had taken on the calm, methodical tone her father had drilled into her during thousands of practice sessions. I'm going to work from closest to farthest, eliminating the coordination elements first. What Elena didn't mention was that her intercepts of Russian communications had revealed something even more troubling. This wasn't just an ambush. It was a test operation designed to assess American Special Forces capabilities. The Russians were gathering intelligence on SEAL tactics, equipment, and response procedures for future operations. Failure to stop them here would compromise American forces throughout the region. Elena adjusted her scope and prepared to demonstrate capabilities that would shock everyone who had dismissed her as just a translator. The night was about to become very different for all involved. Elena's first shot broke the night air with surgical precision. The 7.62 mm round traveled 180 meters in less than a quarter second, striking the Russian spotter who had been directing fire against Martinez's pinned team. Through her scope, Elena saw the target drop immediately, his radio clattering against the rocks. The enemy's coordinated fire pattern faltered as their primary forward observer was eliminated. Target down, she reported calmly, already transitioning to her second target. Her father's training had emphasized speed and precision in sequence shooting, and Elena moved through her firing routine with mechanical efficiency. Breath control, sight alignment, trigger squeeze. Each element performed exactly as Colonel Volkov had drilled into her during countless hours on the Montana ranges. The second shot eliminated the Russian sniper, who had been preparing to engage Johnson's original position. Elena's bullet caught him as he adjusted his scope, the impact dropping him before he could fire. She immediately began scanning for the third target, her scope moving in practiced patterns across the terrain. "Jesus Christ," Johnson whispered, watching Elena work through his binoculars. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Elena didn't respond, completely focused on target identification. She had located the third sniper, positioned behind a low stone wall approximately 200 meters away. This shooter was more experienced, keeping his profile minimal and moving between shots. Elena waited patiently, tracking his movement pattern until she could predict his next position. Her third shot sparked off the stone wall as the sniper moved at the last second. Elena cycled the bolt smoothly and immediately fired again, this time catching the target as he tried to relocate. The sniper stumbled and fell, his rifle sliding down the rocky slope. "3 down," Elena reported, continuing her methodical scan. The radio crackled with Harrison's voice, excitement clear in his transmission. "Overwatch, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Enemy fire is becoming disorganized. Martinez, can you move to extract point Alpha?" "Negative," Martinez responded, still taking accurate fire from elevated positions. "At least 2 more shooters have us pinned." Elena had already identified those positions. The remaining enemy snipers had adjusted their tactics after losing 3 teammates, taking more concealed positions and limiting their exposure. But Elena's linguistic advantage gave her a critical edge. She could understand their Russian coordination efforts, predicting their movements before they made them. "Fourth target, bearing 270, range 230 meters, Elena announced to Johnson. "He's behind the large boulder cluster, approximately 3 meters right of the dead tree." Johnson studied the area through his scope. "I don't see him." "He's there," Elena said confidently, her crosshairs steady on a shadow that most observers would dismiss as terrain features. Her father had taught her to read the smallest indicators, the hint of unnatural angles, the slight variation in shadow patterns that revealed human presence. Elena's fourth shot seemed to hit nothing but rocks, but she watched patiently through her scope. 3 seconds later, a figure tumbled from behind the boulder cluster, confirming her accuracy. The target had been positioned in a way that made immediate observation of the hit impossible, but Elena's experience told her the shot was successful. 4 down, she reported, already seeking the 5th target. The enemy's tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Elena intercepted increasingly frantic Russian communications as the sniper teams realized they were being systematically eliminated by a marksman they couldn't locate. Their coordination broke down as surviving shooters focused on self-preservation rather than mission accomplishment. Elena's 5th and 6th shots came in rapid succession, eliminating 2 shooters who had been providing overwatch for an assault team attempting to flank Martinez's position. Both targets dropped within seconds of each other, their suppressing fire ending abruptly. The tactical effect was immediate. Martinez's team began maneuvering toward the extraction point. "Martinez is mobile," Harrison reported over the radio. "Outstanding shooting, Overwatch. Can you maintain pressure on remaining hostiles?" Elena was already tracking her 7th target, a sniper who had been causing problems for Harrison's team. This shooter was particularly skilled, using advanced concealment techniques and firing from multiple positions. Elena waited through 2 of his relocations, learning his pattern before taking a shot that eliminated him as he moved to his 3rd position. The 8th and 9th shots eliminated a 2-man team that had been attempting to reposition for shots against the SEAL teams. Elena's bullets found both targets within a 10-second window, her precision remaining consistent despite the increasing complexity of target identification. 9 confirmed, Elena reported, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. Through her scope, she could see the enemy forces becoming increasingly disorganized. The systematic elimination of their sniper elements was destroying their tactical coordination. Johnson was providing security and coordination, but his role had shifted to observer of an extraordinary demonstration of marksmanship. Elena's shooting was beyond anything he had witnessed, even among the special operations community. Her target identification skills, combined with her precision shooting, were neutralizing threats that entire fire teams couldn't suppress. Elena's 10th shot eliminated a machine gunner who had been pinning down Harrison's advance team. The target was partially concealed behind an improved fighting position, but Elena's shot found the narrow gap in his protection, dropping him instantly. Harrison's team immediately began advancing toward the compound. The 11th and 12th shots came as Elena engaged a sniper team that had repositioned to threaten the extraction corridor. Both shooters were eliminated within seconds, their coordinated threat ending before they could effectively engage any American personnel. 12 confirmed, Elena announced, continuing her systematic scanning. She could hear the change in enemy communications. Panic was replacing tactical coordination as the surviving Russian forces realized they were facing capabilities they hadn't anticipated. Elena's 13th shot eliminated a sniper who had been engaging from an extremely well-concealed position in the rocks above the compound. She had located him by following his muzzle flash back to its source, then waited for him to expose himself for a follow-up shot. Her patience was rewarded with a clean elimination. The 14th target was the most challenging yet, a highly skilled shooter who had remained completely concealed while his teammates were eliminated around him. Elena located him only by interpreting his radio communications and predicting where he would need to position himself for effective shots. When he finally moved to engage Harrison's team, Elena was waiting. Her 14th shot eliminated him before he could fire, ending the immediate sniper threat to the SEAL teams. But Elena knew the mission wasn't complete. Through her radio intercepts, she had identified that the Russian team leader was coordinating a final counterattack designed to prevent American extraction. "Johnson, I need to change positions," Elena said, beginning to pack her rifle. "The remaining targets are repositioning for a final assault, and I need a better angle to engage them." "Where are you going?" Johnson asked. Elena pointed toward a rocky outcrop 50 meters away. "There. I can cover the final extraction from that position, and I have identified 3 more targets that need elimination before the teams can safely extract." As Elena moved to her new firing position, she could hear Harrison coordinating the final extraction phase. Both SEAL teams were mobile and moving toward the pickup point, but Elena knew the Russian team leader wouldn't let them leave without attempting to inflict maximum casualties during the extraction. Her 15th shot eliminated a sniper who had positioned himself to ambush the extraction corridor. Elena's bullet found him as he settled into his firing position, preventing what would have been devastating fire against the withdrawing SEAL teams. The 16th target was the Russian team's communications specialist, who had been coordinating with external forces to bring additional support into the area. Elena's shot eliminated him as he transmitted coordinates for artillery support, preventing reinforcement that would have trapped the American forces in the area. Elena's 17th and final shot eliminated the Russian team leader himself, who had positioned himself for a last-ditch attempt to kill as many American personnel as possible during extraction. Elena's bullet struck him as he prepared to engage Harrison with an RPG, ending the threat and completing her systematic destruction of the enemy force. 17 confirmed, Elena reported, her voice calm despite having just completed one of the most remarkable marksmanship demonstrations in special operations history. All sniper threats eliminated. Extraction corridor is clear. Johnson stared at her with complete amazement. 17 targets, 17 shots. Elena was already monitoring radio traffic to ensure no additional threats remained. Mission completion confirmed. SEAL teams are safely extracting. What she didn't mention was that her linguistic intercepts had revealed this Russian operation was part of a larger intelligence-gathering effort. The intelligence she had gathered during the engagement would be crucial for preventing future operations, but first they needed to extract safely and get this information to higher command levels. The extraction helicopter arrived 30 minutes later, its rotors beating against the snowy air as it settled onto the designated landing zone. Elena and Johnson reached the pickup point just as Harrison's team was loading wounded personnel. The mission that had begun with casual dismissal of the translator had ended with her single-handedly neutralizing the entire enemy sniper contingent. As they boarded the helicopter, Elena noticed the changed atmosphere among the SEAL team members. The earlier jokes and condescending comments had been replaced by respectful silence and curious glances. Sergeant Martinez, whose team had been saved by Elena's precision shooting, approached her during the flight back to base. "I owe you an apology," Martinez said, his voice barely audible over the engine noise. "And probably my life." Elena nodded professionally, not interested in dwelling on past attitudes. "We all have jobs to do. I'm glad everyone made it home." Lieutenant Commander Harrison spent most of the flight debriefing with Elena about the intelligence she had gathered. Her interception of Russian communications had revealed that this operation was designated Operation Christmas Gift, a systematic test of American Special Operations responses in Afghanistan. The intelligence value of her linguistic work was enormous, potentially preventing future attacks against American forces throughout the region. "The shooting was incredible," Harrison said. "But the intelligence gathering might be even more important. You identified a major security threat that we didn't even know existed." When they landed at the forward operating base, Elena expected to return quietly to her normal duties. Instead, she found herself escorted directly to the base commander's office for an immediate debrief. Word of the night's events had traveled quickly through the command structure, and senior officers wanted to understand exactly what had occurred. Colonel Patricia Webb, the base commander, reviewed Johnson's preliminary report with obvious amazement. 17 confirmed kills with 17 shots? Are you certain of this assessment, Petty Officer Johnson? "Absolutely certain, ma'am," Johnson replied. "I observed the entire engagement. Sergeant Volkov's marksmanship was beyond anything I've witnessed in 15 years of special operations." Elena noticed that Johnson had referred to her by rank rather than simply as the translator. The respect in his voice was genuine, earned through demonstrated competence under fire. She also noticed that Colonel Webb was studying her personnel file with obvious interest. "Your background indicates extensive civilian marksmanship training," Webb observed. "But nothing in your record suggests the level of tactical expertise you demonstrated tonight." "My father was a Russian military sniper instructor before we immigrated," Elena explained. "He believed tactical skills were essential life knowledge, so he trained me from childhood." Colonel Webb nodded thoughtfully. "The intelligence you gathered suggests this Russian operation was significantly more sophisticated than our previous assessments indicated. We need to brief higher command immediately, and I suspect there will be questions about how we missed this level of enemy capability." Over the next several hours, Elena found herself at the center of intensive debriefings with intelligence officers, special operations commanders, and communications specialists. Her linguistic intercepts had revealed not just the immediate tactical situation, but a broader pattern of Russian intelligence gathering that threatened American operations throughout the region. The formal recognition came 3 days later, when Elena was summoned to another meeting with Colonel Webb. This time, senior officers from multiple commands were present, including representatives from Naval Special Warfare Command, who had flown in specifically to debrief the mission. "Sergeant Volkov," Colonel Webb began formally, "your actions during the Christmas Eve operation have been reviewed at the highest levels. The intelligence you gathered and the tactical support you provided saved American lives and prevented a significant intelligence compromise." Elena stood at attention, unsure what to expect. Recognition for translators was typically limited to certificates and mentions in unit newsletters. She had no expectation of anything more substantial. "Effective immediately, you are being reassigned to the Strategic Intelligence Translation Unit, with concurrent assignment to Special Operations Support duties," Webb continued. "Your dual linguistic and tactical capabilities make you uniquely valuable for operations requiring both skill sets." The assignment meant Elena would finally be working in a role that utilized all her capabilities, not just her language skills. More importantly, It represented recognition that her contributions extended far beyond simple translation support. Admiral Michael Henderson, the Naval Special Warfare Representative, stepped forward. Additionally, you are being awarded the Navy Achievement Medal for exceptional performance under fire, and the mission has been submitted for consideration for higher honors pending final intelligence assessment. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction that had nothing to do with awards or recognition. For the first time in her military career, her complete skill set was being acknowledged and valued. The casual dismissal she had endured was being replaced by professional respect earned through demonstrated competence. Johnson approached her after the formal ceremony concluded. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said. "You saved my life, and probably all our lives. I'm sorry it took that situation for us to see what you were capable of." "No apology necessary," Elena replied. "Everyone performed their duties when it mattered." But, privately, Elena reflected on how different the mission could have been if her tactical capabilities had been recognized from the beginning. Better pre-mission intelligence, improved threat assessment, and coordinated sniper support might have prevented the ambush entirely. The lesson was clear. Overlooking someone's capabilities based on assumptions could have deadly consequences. Harrison joined the conversation, carrying a formal folder. "There's one more thing," he said. "Your performance has attracted attention from some very specialized units. If you're interested, there are opportunities for advanced training and assignment to units that would fully utilize your unique combination of skills." Elena considered the offer. The prospect of working with personnel who understood and valued her capabilities was appealing. More importantly, it meant she could serve her country more effectively by using all the skills her father had taught her. "What kind of units?" she asked. Harrison smiled. "The kind that specialize in operations where linguistic and tactical capabilities are equally important. Places where being just a translator would be considered a significant underutilization of your abilities." As Elena walked back to her quarters that evening, she reflected on how dramatically one mission had changed her military career trajectory. The SEALs who had dismissed her as unnecessary support were now recommending her for elite assignments. The casual jokes about babysitting the translator had been replaced by genuine professional respect. More importantly, Elena had proven to herself that her father's training had prepared her for exactly the kind of situations she hoped never to encounter. Colonel Viktor Volkov had been right. In an uncertain world, survival often depended on capabilities that others might overlook or underestimate. The Christmas Eve mission had ended with 17 confirmed kills and 0 American casualties. But, for Elena, the real victory was the recognition that her true value to her country extended far beyond any single role or assignment. She was finally positioned to serve at the level her training and capabilities deserved. 3 months later, Elena reported to her new assignment with a specialized unit that valued both linguistic expertise and tactical proficiency. The casual dismissal she had experienced was replaced by immediate integration into mission planning and tactical decision-making. Her colleagues understood that translation was just one dimension of her capabilities. The mission briefing for her first assignment with the new unit began with a familiar scenario. Intelligence suggested enemy forces were planning an operation against American personnel. But, this time, when Elena offered tactical assessments and threat analysis, her input was welcomed and incorporated into the mission plan. Sergeant Volkov will be providing both linguistic support and precision fire support for this operation, the team leader announced. Her expertise in both areas makes her an integral part of our tactical planning. Elena smiled slightly, remembering the Christmas Eve mission when her capabilities had been so thoroughly underestimated. The transformation from dismissed translator to valued team member represented more than career advancement. It demonstrated the importance of recognizing and utilizing all available capabilities in pursuit of mission success. As her new team prepared for their upcoming operation, Elena reflected on her father's teachings about preparation, capability, and the importance of being ready for any situation. Colonel Volkov had trained his daughter to be more than anyone expected, and that preparation had ultimately saved lives and served her country in ways that simple translation never could have achieved.